Heard stories, seen things. People get crazy ideas when the Blue Hair Brigade shoots down their bird bath. So, this dome thing, technically not against the rules? Technically, no, I confirmed. Gazebos are banned. Domes are not mentioned. Huh, Rusty mused. Sounds like a pain. Bureaucracy, nosy neighbors, probably gotta pour concrete. But I like a challenge, and I ain't exactly fond of folks telling other folks what they can and can't do on their own property. Send me the specs. I'll take a look. It all started, as most suburban tragedies do, with a perfectly reasonable dream. A gazebo. Not a palace, not a multi-level party deck with questionable structural integrity, just a simple 8-sided slice of backyard bliss. Cedar posts, a bit of lattice, maybe a hook for a hanging plant. A place to sip coffee in the morning without the sun trying to sear my retinas. A spot to enjoy a beer after mowing the lawn without being dive-bombed by whatever mutant insects populate Maple Creek estates. You know, nice. Imagine it, Sarah, I said, gesturing expansively towards the patch of slightly uneven grass between the sad azaleas and the fence we definitely needed to repaint. Morning coffee out here, maybe a little bistro table. We could even put the grill under it. No more soggy burgers when it drizzles. My wife, Sarah, bless her pragmatic heart, squinted at the designated spot. It would be nice, Dave, but the HOA? You know how Karen gets. Karen Bishop, president of the Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association. A woman whose primary source of joy seemed to be the meticulous enforcement of rules no one else had ever read, delivered with the kind of condescending smile that could curdle milk at 50 paces. I waved a dismissive hand. It's a gazebo, honey. Standard design. Like the most basic, inoffensive backyard structure imaginable. What's she going to object to? The woodness? The shade? I chuckled, blissfully unaware of the bureaucratic nightmare I was about to step into. Seriously, how hard can it be? Famous, last. Words. The HOA Architectural Review application was a masterpiece of obfuscation, clearly designed by someone who believed applying for a permit to build a small wooden structure should be roughly as complex as applying for clearance to handle nuclear materials. It demanded precise measurements, material lists, color swatches, for wood, mind you, site plans drawn to scale. My attempt looked suspiciously like a child's drawing of a lopsided mushroom, and a detailed explanation of the project's intended aesthetic contribution to the community. My internal monologue was screaming. Intended aesthetic contribution? It's a gazebo, Karen. It contributes shade and keeps bird poop off the patio chairs. What more do you want? A signed affidavit from the cedar tree itself? Out loud, I just sighed and painstakingly filled in every box. For the color swatch, I taped a wood chip from Home Depot onto the page and labeled it Wood Color Classic. For the aesthetic contribution, I wrote, provides a pleasant, shaded area for homeowner relaxation, thereby increasing homeowner satisfaction and contributing to a tranquil neighborhood atmosphere. I felt like I deserved a Pulitzer for that sentence alone. I even included a polite cover letter, practically bowing and scraping in print. I submitted the packet, feeling vaguely like I'd just handed over my firstborn for inspection. Then, I waited. And waited. Finally, an email arrived. Your application requires presentation at the next Architectural Review Committee meeting. Attendance mandatory. The meeting was held in the soulless community clubhouse basement, smelling faintly of stale coffee and regret. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sickly pallor on the proceedings. Karen sat at the head of a folding table, flanked by 2 other board members, Gary, who always looked perpetually confused, and Brenda, a different, much sterner Brenda than the one with the identical gazebo, whose lips seemed permanently pursed in disapproval. I presented my case, trying to sound enthusiastic but professional. I showed my lopsided mushroom drawing. I passed around the wood color classic swatch. Karen picked up my application with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. "Mr. Miller," she began, her voice dripping with faux politeness, "while the committee appreciates your enthusiasm, we have several concerns." Here we go. "Firstly," she continued, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on my drawing, "the proposed roof pitch. It appears to be," she paused for dramatic effect, consulting a binder thick enough to stop a bullet, approximately 30 degrees. Bylaw 7, subsection C, paragraph 4, clearly states that auxiliary shade structures must maintain a roof pitch harmonious with the primary dwelling, not exceeding 25 degrees unless expressly permitted for drainage purposes. My house roof was steeper than 30 degrees. I opened my mouth to point this out, but she cut me off. "Furthermore," Brenda chimed in, her voice like nails on a chalkboard, "the proposed location seems rather close to the Peterson property line. Bylaw 11, subsection A requires a 5-foot setback for all detached structures." "It is 5 feet!" I protested, maybe a little too loudly. "I measured it, twice. See the drawing?" Karen peered at my drawing again. "This diagram lacks professional certification, Mr. Miller, and frankly, the overall scale seems ambitious, almost imposing." "Imposing? It was a kit gazebo, the kind you buy online." "Brenda, down the street," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "Brenda Peterson, the one whose property line you're worried about. She has the exact same model. I checked." Karen gave me that smile. "The deadly one." "Ah, yes. The Peterson gazebo. Approved in 2017 under previous guidelines. We have since adopted a more rigorous standard, Mr. Miller. Continuous improvement, you understand." Gary just nodded vaguely, looking like he wished he were anywhere else. The vote was a formality. "Application denied," Karen announced, already shuffling my papers into a rejection pile. "Lack of adherence to roof pitch guidelines, potential setback encroachment pending certified survey, and general aesthetic disharmony with current community standards. Next." I walked out of that basement room in a daze. The fluorescent lights seemed to buzz mockingly. Aesthetic disharmony? It was a gazebo! Rage began to bubble in my chest, hot and unfamiliar. I got in my car and just sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. I called Sarah. "You are not going to believe this," I started, and proceeded to recount the entire infuriating exchange, complete with exaggerated Karen impressions that probably made me sound like a lunatic. "They rejected the gazebo?" Sarah sounded incredulous. "Because of the roof pitch?" "And aesthetic disharmony." I spat the words out. "Disharmony! It's beige wood, Sarah. How harmonious can it get?" Okay, calm down," she said, though I could hear the sympathy in her voice. "It's ridiculous, I know, but maybe we can adjust the plans. Lower the roof pitch?" "No," I said, the word coming out colder than I intended. "No, it's not about the gazebo anymore. It's the principle, the sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it all." That evening, I sat on the patio, staring at the empty patch of grass. The ghost of the gazebo mocked me. The injustice gnawed at me. Fine. If I couldn't have a simple, tasteful, approved structure, what could I have? I pulled out my phone. My fingers flew across the screen, initially searching for HOA loopholes, obscure architectural terms, anything I could use to fight back. I typed in unusual backyard structures, then structures not typically covered by HOA rules. My search history started looking increasingly weird. Tree houses? Too juvenile. Underground bunkers? Too much digging? Shipping container homes? Probably covered under sheds. And then, I saw it. Geodesic domes. Pictures of glass-paneled spheres, metal frameworks glinting in the sun. Used for greenhouses, observatories, sometimes even homes. They looked otherworldly, scientific. And most importantly, the word dome appeared absolutely nowhere in the Maple Creek Estate's HOA bylaws and architectural guidelines binder that I now kept by my bedside like a cursed Bible. A slow, dangerous grin spread across my face. It felt alien and wonderful. "It's not a gazebo," I muttered to the empty backyard. "It's not a shed. It's not a pool house." I scrolled faster, finding suppliers, options, sizes, insulated panels, UV-blocking glass, climate control systems. "Sarah?" I called, walking back inside, my phone held aloft like a holy relic. "Honey, you need to see this." I showed her the pictures. Sleek, modern, slightly sci-fi looking domes. "What is that?" she asked, eyeing the phone suspiciously. "It's our new backyard feature," I declared, perhaps a tad too triumphantly. "A geodesic dome. Think of it, a year-round sunroom, a personal observatory, a horticultural laboratory." Sarah stared at me, then at the phone, then back at me. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Dave, are you serious? A dome? Like a Bond villain's lair?" "Smaller," I insisted. "Much smaller and classier. Think Epcot Center, but, in our yard. Where would we even put that monstrosity?" I pointed dramatically out the window. "Right where the gazebo was supposed to go." "You're doing this just to spite Karen, aren't you?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Spite is a powerful motivator," I admitted. "But also, think of the stargazing, the controlled environment for your orchids." She didn't have orchids, but it sounded good. "And the best part?" I leaned in conspiratorially. "I've read the bylaws cover to cover, twice. Sheds, fences, pools, pergolas, arbors, gazebos, they're all listed. But domes, geodesic structures, personal biospheres, not a word." Sarah sighed, the long-suffering sigh of a spouse married to an idiot. "This is going to end badly, Dave." "Or," I countered, puffing out my chest, "it's going to end gloriously." The next few days were a blur of obsessive research. I learned more about Buckminster Fuller, polyhedra, and glazing options than I ever thought possible. I calculated angles, compared insulation R values, and debated the merits of polycarbonate versus tempered glass. Sarah mostly just shook her head whenever she saw me hunched over my laptop, muttering about struts and hubs. Then came the calls. Finding someone willing to build a residential geodesic dome wasn't exactly easy. My first call was to a standard home builder, the kind whose trucks you see everywhere. "Hi, I'm looking to get a quote for installing a geodesic dome structure in my backyard," I said, trying to sound casual. Silence, then, "A what now, like one of them jungle gyms?" No, it's glass. Panels, like a big glass ball." More silence. "You want to build a glass ball in your backyard, like for aliens or something?" Click. He hung up. Okay, maybe I needed someone more specialized. I tried a greenhouse company next. "Yeah, we do domes," the guy said, sounding bored. "Got kits, custom builds? What size you need? Growing tomatoes, tropicals?" "Well, it's not really for growing things," I admitted. "It's more for relaxing, stargazing." "Huh, so like a sunroom, but round?" "Exactly." I felt a surge of hope. "Insulated glass? Climate control?" "Yes, that's it." "Yeah, man, we don't really do that. Our stuff's for plants, Keeps the frost off. You want insulated, people-rated stuff? That's a whole different ballgame. Gonna cost you." He didn't sound interested. I tried an architectural firm whose website featured some weird, angular houses. The receptionist put me through to an architect who sounded way too enthusiastic. Ah, Mr. Miller, a geodesic structure, fascinating. A truly elegant expression of structural efficiency. Are we considering a Class 1 or Class 2 subdivision, adhering strictly to Fuller's original tensegrity principles, or perhaps exploring a more modern interpretation utilizing finite element analysis for optimized load distribution? My eyes glazed over. I just want a glass dome, about 15 feet across, to annoy my HOA. There was a pause. Ah, I see. While the spirit of the project is intriguing, perhaps our firm's focus on large-scale conceptual art installations isn't the best fit. Good luck, Mr. Miller. Click. I was starting to despair. Was my dream of petty spherical revenge doomed? I scrolled through pages of search results, clicking on increasingly obscure links. Finally, I landed on a bare-bones website. Rusty's Custom Builds and Odd Jobs. If it's weird, we build it. There was a grainy photo of a man who looked like he wrestled bears for fun, standing next to a strangely shaped shed. I dialed the number. A gruff voice answered after 2 rings. Rusty. Hi, Rusty. My name's Dave Miller. I found your website. I have kind of an unusual project. I took a deep breath. I want to install a fully insulated, glass-paneled geodesic dome in my backyard. Silence. I braced for the hang-up. Then Rusty chuckled. A low, gravelly sound. A glass dome, huh? Like Epcot? Smaller, I said quickly. Much smaller. Maybe 15, 20 feet diameter. Insulated, why? I hesitated. The truth sounded insane. Stargazing? Year-round relaxation? Energy efficiency? Rusty grunted. This got something to do with sticking it to one of them homeowner associations? My jaw dropped. How did you know? Lucky guess, Rusty said dryly. Heard stories, seen things. People get crazy ideas when the Blue Hair Brigade shoots down their bird bath. So this dome thing, technically not against the rules? Technically, no, I confirmed. Gazebos are banned. Domes are not mentioned. Huh, Rusty mused. Sounds like a pain. Bureaucracy, nosy neighbors, probably gotta pour concrete. But I like a challenge. And I ain't exactly fond of folks telling other folks what they can and can't do on their own property. Send me the specs. I'll take a look. A few days later, Rusty himself showed up. He looked exactly like his picture-weathered face, faded overalls, arms like oak branches, and eyes that seemed to see right through my suburban dad facade. He walked around the designated spot, kicking at the turf, squinting at the house, then back at the spot. All right, Dave, he said, scratching his chin. So, right here, the sphere of spite. It's a peaceful observatory, I protested weakly. Rusty just grinned. Right, peaceful. Okay, look, this ain't no pop-up tent. You want this thing to stay put, not blow away in the first stiff breeze. You need a proper foundation. Reinforced concrete slab, probably 6 inches thick. Need to think about drainage too, unless you want a moat. And power hookup if you want lights and that climate control nonsense. He looked me square in the eye. This is gonna make noise. It's gonna make a mess. Your neighbors will notice. Especially, what's her name, Karen? Karen Bishop, I confirmed. Right, Karen's gonna notice. So the trick is, Rusty lowered his voice slightly, get the slab poured before they can really figure out what it's for. Concrete truck shows up, pours the pad. By the time Karen gets her clipboard out, the slab's curing. Harder to stop something that's already started, you know? Creates facts on the ground, so to speak. I liked the way Rusty thought. Militant, almost. He scribbled some numbers on a notepad. Dome kit itself depends on the supplier you choose. Glass panels ain't cheap, especially insulated. My labor, the concrete, permits. if we decide to bother with him for the slab. He named a price that made my stomach clench and my wallet whimper in anticipated pain. It was significantly more than the gazebo would have cost, probably 3 times more. I looked at the empty patch of grass. I pictured Karen's smug face at the meeting. I thought of the phrase, aesthetic disharmony. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "Let's build the dome." Rusty clapped me on the shoulder, nearly sending me stumbling. "Attaboy, Dave. Operation Dome is a go." Operation Dome commenced the following Monday at 7 a.m. sharp. The first indication was a low rumble that vibrated through the house, rattling the coffee cups. I rushed to the window. A massive concrete truck was maneuvering its way down our quiet suburban street, its backup beeper piercing the morning calm like an air raid siren. Rusty's crew, a motley bunch in dusty jeans and t-shirts, were already setting up forms in the backyard. Neighbors started appearing like meerkats popping out of burrows. Curtains twitched. Doors opened a crack. My next-door neighbor, Bob, a retiree whose main hobby was competitive lawn care, wandered over, coffee mug in hand. "Morning, Dave," he called out over the roar of the truck. "Bit early for construction, isn't it? Big project?" I tried to look nonchalant, leaning against the fence like this was all perfectly normal. "Morning, Bob. Oh, just putting in a new patio feature. Little upgrade." Bob squinted at the wooden forms and the growing network of rebar. "Looks kinda substantial for a patio feature. Like a bunker entrance?" "Haha, nope. Just really sturdy," I stammered. "Good foundation, Just then, Karen Bishop's sensible sedan cruised slowly down the street, her head swiveled, eyes narrowed, taking in the scene. The concrete truck, the crew, the forms. She didn't stop, but I could feel her disapproval radiating across the lawns. Rusty caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. Phase 1, facts on the ground, was underway. The concrete flowed, thick and gray, filling the forms. By lunchtime, the slab sat there, smooth and imposing, daring anyone to question its existence. A week later, the dome itself arrived. Not discreetly, not quietly. It came on the biggest flatbed truck I had ever seen, piled high with enormous crates and long, curved metal struts wrapped in plastic. The glass panels were stacked in terrifyingly fragile-looking racks. The truck driver had the weary look of someone who delivered oversized, inexplicable objects for a living. Getting the truck down Maple Creek Lane was an exercise in controlled chaos. Rusty walked alongside, waving his arms like a frantic orchestra conductor, yelling instructions. "Easy now. Watch the mailbox. Swing it wide. Wide, I said. You're going to take out Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning petunias." Hedges were brushed, mailboxes wobbled, but somehow, miraculously, the truck reached my house without causing an international incident. Sarah came out to watch, her face pale. "Dave," she whispered, clutching my arm. It's huge. It looks like a spaceship crash-landed." "Isn't it majestic?" I beamed, ignoring the churning anxiety in my gut. It was bigger than I'd pictured, significantly bigger. Unloading took hours. The crew carefully maneuvered the heavy crates and delicate glass panels into the backyard, using dollies and sheer manpower. Neighbors gathered at a safe distance, whispering and pointing. Phones were definitely out. I could practically hear the neighborhood Facebook group exploding with speculation. "Anyone know what Dave Miller is building?" "Looks like a UFO." "My cousin saw something like this on Ancient Aliens." Assembly began the next day. Rusty and his crew, fueled by coffee and what I suspected was a healthy dose of amused curiosity, started bolting together the geodesic framework. It went up surprisingly fast, like a giant Meccano set. First a base ring, then triangles building upon triangles, reaching skyward. "What is this thing, boss?" I overheard one of the younger crew members ask Rusty during a break. Rusty took a swig from his thermos. "It's freedom, boys. Freedom from tyranny." "Looks like a giant hamster ball," another one muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. I chose to ignore him. By the end of the second day, the skeletal dome dominated the backyard. It was stark, metallic, and utterly out of place among the tidy lawns and colonial-style houses. And it acted like a magnet for the HOA president. Right on cue, Karen Bishop marched across my lawn, clipboard held like a weapon, her two loyal board members, Gary and stern Brenda, trailing in her wake like disgruntled gargoyles. "Mr. Miller!" Her voice cut through the afternoon air. "What is the meaning of this structure?" I took a deep breath, channeling my inner Zen master, or at least someone who had read the bylaws very, very carefully. "Afternoon, Karen. Brenda, Gary, lovely day, isn't it?" I gestured towards the metal skeleton. "Just overseeing the installation of my freestanding horticultural and astronomical observation unit." Karen blinked. "Your what?" "My freestanding horticultural and astronomical observation unit," I repeated slowly, savoring each syllable. "You'll find no mention of such units in the architectural guidelines. Therefore, it doesn't fall under the committee's purview for pre-approval." Karen's face went from confused to furious. "Don't be absurd. It's clearly a structure. It's hideous. It violates, She flipped frantically through her ever-present binder. "Aesthetic harmony. Bylaw 3. It's a visual blight." "Is aesthetic harmony objectively defined anywhere in that binder, Karen?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Because personally, I find the inherent mathematical beauty of the geodesic design quite harmonious, and once the glass panels are in, it will be largely transparent, very unobtrusive." Rusty sauntered over, wiping grease from his hands onto his already filthy overalls. "Yep," he drawled, nodding towards Karen, but addressing me. "Framework's going up nice and solid. Should have the glass in by the end of the week, boss." "Oh, morning, ma'am." He gave Karen a nod that was just shy of respectful. "Don't worry, it's all being built to code. Got the city permits right here, if you need to see 'em." He patted his chest pocket. I had no idea if he actually had permits or not, but the bluff seemed to work. Karen sputtered, momentarily silenced. She glared at the dome, then at me, then at Rusty. She took several pictures with her phone, her thumb jabbing angrily at the screen. "This isn't over, Mr. Miller," she hissed. "You will be hearing from the HOA. Fines will be levied. Our lawyers will be contacted." She spun on her heel and marched off, her entourage scurrying behind her. Rusty watched them go, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Round 1 to the observatory, Dave." The letters started arriving the next day. Official HOA stationery, crisp and threatening. Warning: unauthorized construction in progress. Notice of violation. Bylaw 3. Aesthetic disharmony. Fine assessment, $100. Unapproved structure, daily levy. A new one arrived every single day. I started a collection. I even framed the first $100 fine notice and hung it proudly from one of the metal struts inside the partially completed dome. Sarah thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. "You know," I said to Rusty one afternoon, watching his crew carefully install the heavy, curved glass panels, "I was thinking, this thing needs lights. For safety, you know? Pathway illumination." Rusty raised an eyebrow. "Pathway illumination? Or make Karen's eye twitch every time she looks out her window illumination?" "Let's call it multi-purpose," I said with a grin. That weekend, Rusty installed programmable LED strip lights around the base of the dome. That night, I set them to a slow, gentle, color-shifting cycle. From the street, the dome pulsed with soft blues, greens, and purples. It was, I had to admit, spectacularly weird. The neighborhood reaction was mixed. Some people clearly thought I was nuts, but were secretly enjoying the drama. Mrs. Gable from across the street left a basket of muffins on our porch with an anonymous note. Go, Dave, go. Others were firmly Team Karen. Passive-aggressive comments were made over fences about maintaining property values. Someone's sprinkler system malfunctioned, soaking the side of our house for an hour. The for sale sign that popped up on the Petersons' lawn next door felt pointed, though Brenda Peterson just sniffed and said they were downsizing when I asked. The tension was palpable. You could cut it with a plastic HOA-approved butter knife. And then Karen escalated. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. Sarah and I were eating dinner, the dome gleaming softly outside the patio door like a slumbering alien artifact. Then, flashing blue and red lights filled the street. 2 police cars pulled up, parking directly in front of my house. "Oh no," Sarah breathed, putting her fork down. "She didn't." "Oh, I think she did," I said grimly, wiping my mouth and heading for the door. 2 officers got out, looking unimpressed. One was older, stocky, with a name tag that read Miller. The other was younger, sharper, name tag Chen. "Evening," Officer Miller said, his voice tired. "You Dave Miller?" "Yes, officer. Is there a problem?" I tried to sound calm, innocent. Just a normal guy standing on his porch next to his giant glass dome. "We received a call," Officer Miller continued, gesturing vaguely towards the glowing orb in my backyard. "Report of a suspicious structure, possible illegal construction activity, zoning violations." He sighed. "Mind telling us what exactly that thing is?" Before I could launch into my freestanding horticultural and astronomical observation unit spiel, Karen appeared as if summoned, power walking across her lawn, phone held high like she was documenting a war crime. "Officers! Thank goodness you're here!" she exclaimed breathlessly. "This man," she pointed dramatically at me, "is constructing this monstrosity in direct violation of HOA covenants. It's an eyesore. It's attracting unwanted attention. It's probably structurally unsound. Who knows what he's really doing in there?" Officer Miller pinched the bridge of his nose. "Ma'am," he said, his voice strained with forced patience. "With all due respect, HOA covenants are a civil matter. We enforce city ordinances and state laws. Is this structure violating any city building codes? Has it been condemned by a city inspector?" Karen deflated slightly. "Well, no, not yet, but—" "Is he conducting illegal activity inside?" Officer Chen asked, looking from Karen to me. "I'm observing the stars, officer," I said smoothly, "and occasionally horticulture. It has excellent insulation." Officer Miller looked at the dome, then back at me. He looked like he'd seen it all, and a suburban dome war wasn't even in his top 10 weirdest calls of the week. "Sir, as long as you have the proper city permits for the structure itself, electrical, foundation, etc., and you're not breaking any laws, this is between you and the homeowners association." He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you need to take this up through civil channels. Lawyers, mediation, whatever it is you folks do. It's not a police matter." Karen looked like she might spontaneously combust. But it's glowing." "So are Christmas lights, ma'am," Officer Chen said flatly. "Are we done here?" The officers exchanged a look, nodded curtly, and got back in their cars. As they pulled away, I could have sworn Officer Miller was hiding a smirk. Karen stood on the sidewalk, practically vibrating with impotent rage. She glared at me, then at the dome, then stalked back to her house. "Well," Sarah said, coming up behind me as the flashing lights disappeared down the street. "That was fun." "Just another Tuesday in Maple Creek Estates," I sighed. But inside, I felt a surge of triumph. Karen had brought out the big guns, and they'd holstered them. The dome was still standing, and it was almost finished. The final piece of glass clicked into place the next afternoon. Rusty's crew swept the patio, packed their tools, and admired their handiwork. The dome gleamed in the sunlight, a perfect, slightly absurd sphere sitting incongruously in my suburban backyard. "She's all yours, Dave," Rusty said, clapping me on the back again. "Solid as a rock. Keep liquids away from the electrical panel, don't throw baseballs at it, and she should last you." "Thanks, Rusty," I said sincerely, "for everything. You and your guys were great." "Hey," he shrugged, "keeps things interesting. Beats building decks all day. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Send me pictures if Karen tries to storm it with torches and pitchforks." He grinned, got in his truck, and rumbled away, leaving me alone with my creation. I hesitated for a moment, then walked to the door of the dome and stepped inside. The heavy glass door sealed with a satisfying thump. Suddenly, the neighborhood sounds, the distant lawnmower, the barking dog, the faint traffic noise, faded away. It was surprisingly quiet, insulated, just like the brochure promised. The sunlight streamed through the panels, warming the air inside. My backyard, viewed through the curved glass, looked slightly distorted, like an exhibit in a human zoo. It was utterly ridiculous. And it was mine. I stood there for a long time, just breathing the filtered air, a stupid grin plastered on my face. Sarah found me there eventually. She stepped inside, looking around cautiously. "Wow, it's actually kind of cool in here. Bigger than it looks from the outside." She paused. "But also completely insane. Seriously, Dave, what are we going to do with it?" "Observe," I declared, striking a pose. "We shall observe the heavens. We shall cultivate rare ferns. We shall sit in here when it rains." She just shook her head, but I saw a small smile playing on her lips. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to come around to the sheer, glorious absurdity of it all. The uneasy quiet lasted precisely 48 hours. Then came the email. Subject, urgent, emergency HOA meeting, the Miller property issue. "Dear residents," it began, the tone managing to be both passive-aggressive and alarmist. "An emergency meeting of the Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association has been called for this Friday evening at 7 p.m. in the community clubhouse. The sole agenda item will be addressing the unauthorized, non-compliant, and aesthetically detrimental structure recently erected at the Miller property, Lot 42. Discussion will include potential legal remedies, forced removal options, and community action. Your attendance and input are crucial. Signed, Karen Bishop, President, and the full weight of the Architectural Review Committee." "Wow," Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. "She's really going for the nuclear option." "Forced removal?" I scoffed. "Good luck with that. It's anchored in 6 inches of reinforced concrete." But the mention of lawyers and community action gave me a slight pause. Karen, when cornered, could be dangerously resourceful. I looked out at the dome, gleaming innocently under the afternoon sun. An idea began to form, sparked by defiance and fueled by petty brilliance. "You know what, Sarah?" I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. "If Karen wants a community gathering on Friday night to discuss my dome, then let's give the community something to really gather for. Dave, what are you planning?" Her voice held a note of caution. "Operation Dome isn't over," I declared. "It's time for Phase 3, the dome warming party. The plan was simple, yet diabolical. We would host a dome-warming star party in our backyard, scheduled for the exact same time as Karen's emergency HOA meeting. Friday, 7 p.m. Invitations were crafted with mischievous care. I emailed the neighbors I knew were secretly on my side, like Mrs. Gable, the muffin benefactor. I called Rusty and his crew. "Consider it a job completion bonus," I told him. I even posted a deliberately vague, slightly cryptic invitation on the town's community Facebook page. "Curious about the newest architectural marvel in Maple Creek Estates? Join us for a dome warming and star party this Friday at 7 p.m. See the stars like never before. Refreshments provided. Address, my address, #Maple Creek Mystery #Dome Sweet Dome." Sarah, initially hesitant, got swept up in the absurdity. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right," she declared. We spent the next 2 days in a frenzy of preparation. We bought strings of fairy lights and draped them inside the dome, creating a magical, twinkling atmosphere. We dragged in beanbag chairs and cushions. I set up my old, dusty telescope near one of the panels. Never mind that I barely knew how to use it. Sarah found an inflatable green alien left over from Halloween and propped it up in a corner, holding a bowl of chips. We bought cases of beer, soda, and boxes of cosmic brownies. I curated a playlist heavy on space-themed music, David Bowie, Holst's The Planets, the theme from 2001, and naturally the Star Wars Cantina Band song on repeat. Friday evening arrived, charged with anticipation. As 7 p.m. approached, cars began lining the street, not just for the clubhouse meeting, but for our house too. Rusty arrived with 2 of his guys, looking amused. Mrs. Gable came bearing another baked good star-shaped cookies. A few other sympathetic neighbors trickled in, eyes wide with curiosity. Even a couple of teenagers I didn't recognize showed up, drawn by the Facebook post and the promise of weirdness. Meanwhile, across the street and down the block, grim-faced residents were filing into the clubhouse for Karen's war council. I could almost feel the waves of righteous indignation rolling across the lawns. I turned up the cantina music. "Welcome, welcome!" I greeted guests, gesturing towards the glowing dome. "Grab a drink, find a beanbag, the cosmos awaits!" Inside the dome, it was surreal. Fairy lights twinkled, the inflatable alien presided over the snacks, and the muffled sounds of the party outside contrasted with the focused beam of my telescope, pointing vaguely skyward. People mingled, laughing, pointing, marveling at the structure. Rusty was holding court, explaining the finer points of geodesic construction to a rapt audience. "See, the triangles distribute the stress," he was saying, gesturing with a half-eaten brownie. "Strongest shape there is. Karen could drive her sedan into this thing, and it probably wouldn't even dent. Much." Suddenly, the cantina music was drowned out by an angry shout. "Miller!" The party chatter died down. All heads turned towards the backyard entrance. There stood Karen, flanked by Gary, Stern Brenda, and about a dozen other furious-looking HOA members who had clearly abandoned the official meeting. Karen's face was puce. "Miller!" she yelled again, marching towards the dome, her entourage trailing like an angry mob. "What is the meaning of this? Shut this circus down immediately. We are trying to conduct an official homeowners association meeting concerning your illegal structure." I stepped out of the dome, holding a plastic cup of beer, a picture of relaxed defiance. "Karen, neighbors, welcome!" I beamed, gesturing expansively. "So glad you could join the dome warming. Grab a cosmic brownie, plenty to go around. Just celebrating a little architectural innovation. Isn't she magnificent?" "Magnificent," sputtered a man I recognized from the meeting. "It blocks my afternoon sun." "It reflects glare directly into my kitchen window," added a woman standing beside him. "My property value is plummeting," someone else wailed. "It's not illegal," I countered, raising my voice over the rising clamor. "It's not covered in the bylaws. It's a freestanding horticultural and—" "Don't you dare say astronomical observation unit again," Karen shrieked, jabbing a finger at me. "We have bylaws. We have standards. This blight is coming down, Miller, one way or another. We'll get a court order." "On what grounds?" I shot back. "Aesthetic disharmony? Show me the legal precedent for that." Arguments erupted. My party guests looked on, wide-eyed. Rusty folded his arms, looking thoroughly entertained. Sarah stood beside me, looking nervous but resolute. It was chaos. Shouting, finger-pointing, bylaw quoting. Stern Brenda was arguing with Mrs. Gable about muffin recipes for some reason. And then the turning point. A car pulled up, not belonging to a resident. A woman got out with a microphone, followed by a man with a large TV camera on his shoulder. "Channel 8 News," the woman announced brightly. "We got a tip about a neighborhood dispute involving a large glass dome." Karen froze mid-shout. The angry mob behind her shuffled awkwardly. Suddenly, yelling about property values and aesthetic harmony in front of a news camera seemed less appealing. The reporter zeroed in on the dome, then on me, then on Karen's furious face. "Ma'am, sir, care to tell us what's going on here?" Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked trapped. Before she could recover, old Mr. Henderson, the neighborhood's longest resident and generally quietest man, spoke up from the edge of the crowd. His voice was frail but carried. "Honestly, Karen," he said, looking directly at her, "I've lived here 40 years. Seen worse things than this dome. Remember your prize-winning flock of pink plastic flamingos back in '98? Covered half your lawn. This thing's practically invisible compared to that." He chuckled. "It's his property. Let the man have his dome." A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. A few people nodded. The news camera swung towards Mr. Henderson. In the ensuing confusion and Karen's stunned silence, Gary, the perpetually confused board member, tripped backwards over the garden hose Sarah had strategically left out earlier, landing with a soft thump right in the middle of her prize-winning and currently blooming azalea bush. That was it. The fight went out of Karen. She looked at the news camera, at Mr. Henderson being interviewed, at Gary struggling to extricate himself from the azaleas, and finally at the glowing, unapologetic dome. She knew she'd lost this battle. "This isn't over," she muttered, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. She shot me one last venomous glare, then turned and stalked away, her remaining posse trailing defeatedly behind her. A cheer went up from my party guests. Rusty raised his beer can. "To the dome!" I raised my plastic cup. "To the dome?" The aftermath wasn't exactly peaceful, but it was quieter. Karen avoided eye contact when we passed on the street. The threatening HOA letters stopped arriving. The "for sale" sign next door eventually came down. The Petersons apparently decided downsizing wasn't for them after all. The Channel 8 news story aired, painting it as a quirky neighborhood spat, with me as the eccentric but harmless dome guy. My 15 minutes of local fame. Living with the dome, however, presented its own challenges. Summer arrived, and I quickly discovered that a fully insulated glass dome acts like a giant magnifying glass pointed directly at itself. On sunny days, the interior temperature soared past 100 degrees. My year-round relaxation involved installing a comically oversized, incredibly loud portable air conditioner unit, vented through a modified panel. So much for energy efficiency. Winter brought condensation. Thick fog coated the inside of the glass, completely obscuring any view of the stars I was allegedly observing. I bought a squeegee on a ridiculously long pole to try and keep it clear. It was only partially successful. Using it was awkward. Sarah and I tried having dinner in there once. The acoustics were bizarre. Every clink of a fork echoed endlessly. "Pass the salt, salt, salt," became a running joke. Stargazing was mostly me fiddling with the telescope, pretending I knew what I was looking at, while Sarah read a book on her tablet. The inflatable alien eventually sprung a leak and listed sadly to one side. Rusty stopped by one Saturday, ostensibly to check on the seals, but mostly, I think, out of curiosity. "Heard you won the war," he said, accepting the beer I offered him. "The battle, Rusty," I corrected him, looking at the slightly fogged-up dome. "With Karen, the war is never truly over." "So," he said, eyeing the structure speculatively, "ever think about adding a rotating base? Or maybe some laser lights? Could project constellations onto the clouds?" "I think," I said firmly, "that we've achieved peak architectural absurdity for now." He chuckled. "Probably wise. Keep it weird, Dave." He finished his beer and left. Life settled into a new, dome-centric normal. People still drove by slowly sometimes. Teenagers still occasionally took selfies with it in the background. I was, and likely always would be, Dome Guy. One evening, months later, I was sitting inside the dome, AC blasting, squeegee leaning in the corner, reading a book. It was quiet, almost peaceful. Sarah came in and sat beside me on a beanbag. "You know," she said, looking around at the curved glass walls and the faint glow of the fairy lights, "it's still completely ridiculous." "I know," I replied, smiling. "Isn't it great?" Just then, I saw something slip under the front door of the house. An envelope. Official-looking. My heart gave a familiar lurch. Had Karen found a new angle? A forgotten bylaw? I went inside and picked it up. It was from the Maple Creek Estates HOA. I tore it open, bracing myself. "Dear Mr. Miller," it read, "this notice serves as a formal warning regarding a violation of HOA Bylaw 14, subsection G, exterior lighting fixtures. The recently installed pathway lights leading to your auxiliary structure exceed the maximum allowable lumen output for residential pathways, creating excessive light spill. Please rectify this violation within 14 days by replacing the bulbs with lower wattage, HOA-approved alternatives." I stared at the letter. Pathway lights. Not the dome. The pathway lights. I leaned against the doorframe and started to laugh. A deep, genuine, slightly hysterical laugh. Sarah came to see what was wrong. I just held up the letter. She read it, and a slow smile spread across her face. "Oh, for heaven's sake." "Here we go again," I chuckled, shaking my head. The war wasn't over. It had just shifted to a new, lower wattage front. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.